Franz Kafka is remembered as one of the most powerful and unsettling voices of the 20th century. Born in Prague in 1883, he lived a double life, a regular employee by day and a writer by night. His works, though short and often strange, reveal a deep understanding of the human condition. Kafka explored themes that remain painfully relevant today: alienation, identity, the weight of responsibility, and the struggle to remain human in a world that often feels mechanical and indifferent. His most famous story, The Metamorphosis, captures this struggle in a way that is both surreal and brutally honest. In the story, Gregor Samsa wakes up to discover he has been transformed into a giant insect. Yet, instead of panicking, his first thought is about work, deadlines, and the fear of letting his family down. This single detail is Kafka's genius. The transformation is not only physical but symbolic. It exposes how society often reduces people to what they can provide, how families and institutions measure worth by productivity, and how quickly love and respect disappear when usefulness is gone. Gregor's tragedy is not just his transformation, but the slow erosion of his humanity in the eyes of those closest to him. As his family withdraws their care and eventually rejects him completely, Kafka forces us to confront a painful truth. In a world obsessed with utility and appearances, it is frighteningly easy to lose yourself and to be forgotten. In modern life, routine can feel like a silent prison. Every day, we wake up to alarms, check notifications, and move from one task to another almost automatically. At first glance, it seems efficient, even productive. Yet, beneath this structure, lies a subtle trap. We begin to define ourselves entirely by what we do rather than who we are. Franz Kafka understood this instinctively. In The Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa's first concern upon waking as a giant insect is not the shock of his transformation, but the fear of being late to work. This detail is not just a strange narrative choice, it is a mirror held up to the human condition. We too can spend our lives so absorbed in routines and responsibilities that our inner selves slowly fade into the background. Our jobs, obligations, and schedules become the framework of our identity, leaving little room for reflection, passion, or genuine connection. Over time, this constant mechanical motion erodes our sense of autonomy, making us feel like cogs in a machine rather than individuals with unique thoughts, feelings, and desires. The danger of routine is not merely boredom, it is the gradual invisibility of the self. When every decision, every moment, and every action is guided by obligation, we forget to ask fundamental questions. Who am I beyond this schedule? What brings me joy independent of productivity? Kafka's story forces us to confront this uncomfortable truth. Our routines, no matter how structured, can become prisons if we allow them to define our worth. To escape this silent cage, we must begin to reclaim fragments of time for ourselves, where we pause, reflect, and reconnect with our values. This is not laziness or indulgence, it is an essential act of survival for the psyche. By recognizing the ways in which routine consumes us, we open the door to conscious living, where our actions serve not only productivity but also the preservation and flourishing of our inner selves. One of the most profound lessons in Kafka's work is how quickly love and care can become conditional, especially when they are tied to usefulness. In The Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa is the sole provider for his family. His identity, his sense of purpose, and even his perceived worth are intertwined with his ability to earn and support those he loves. When his transformation renders him incapable of working, the dynamics shift almost immediately. The love and attention he once received vanish, replaced by horror, frustration, and eventually outright rejection. His family no longer sees Gregor as a person, they see him as a burden. This painful shift exposes a universal truth. When relationships are based on what one provides rather than who one is, they are fragile and conditional. Kafka's narrative mirrors contemporary life, where societal and familial expectations often pressure individuals to perform constantly. Many people tie their self-esteem to achievements, status, or utility, fearing that without continuous productivity, they will be abandoned or overlooked. This fear of uselessness becomes a silent prison, compelling people to overextend themselves emotionally, financially, or professionally. It also fosters a troubling dynamic. The more we give to gain approval or maintain love, the more we risk losing touch with our authentic selves. Beyond individual psychology, this theme reflects a societal problem. Capitalist structures, cultural norms, and social pressures frequently equate value with output. Whether at work or within family units, people are subtly taught that their contributions are more important than their presence. Kafka's story is not merely about Gregor's tragedy, it is a mirror of a world where love and respect are often transactional. The lesson is clear. Genuine relationships are rooted in recognition of the person, not just their function. To navigate this, we must cultivate self-worth independent of external validation and learn to foster connections based on mutual respect, empathy, and recognition of intrinsic humanity. Only by doing so can we protect ourselves from the eroding effects of conditional love and the paralyzing fear of being perceived as useless. One of the most unsettling aspects of Kafka's work is the way he exposes the gradual disappearance of the self under societal pressures and personal obligations. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa's transformation into a giant insect is a dramatic and literal metaphor for what happens when a person loses touch with their own identity. Before his transformation, Gregor is already defined by the roles he plays. He is the dutiful son, the reliable employee, and the primary provider for his family. These roles, while socially necessary, consume his individuality. His desires, preferences, and personal voice are subordinated to the expectations of others. When the external form of his body changes, the internal erosion of self is starkly revealed. His family no longer acknowledges him as a person, and even he struggles to remember who he truly is beyond these assigned roles. This mirrors a universal experience in modern life, where individuals are constantly negotiating between their authentic selves and the masks they wear to satisfy work, society, and family. Over time, the relentless pressure to conform, perform, and provide can leave a person disconnected from their own thoughts, passions, and emotions. Many live in a state of quiet compliance, unaware that they have surrendered their inner voice. Kafka's insight is that losing oneself is not an abrupt event, it is a gradual, almost imperceptible process, intensified when external validation becomes the primary measure of worth. To resist this disappearance, one must consciously reclaim the right to define oneself beyond societal expectations. This requires introspection, asking fundamental questions like, who am I when no one is watching? Or what do I care about independent of my responsibilities? By cultivating awareness of personal values, desires, and boundaries, it becomes possible to preserve a core sense of identity. Kafka's work warns us that if this reclamation does not occur, the self risks being entirely consumed by roles, obligations, and expectations, leaving individuals alienated not only from others but from themselves. True survival, both emotionally and spiritually, requires protecting the voice and presence of the authentic self before it disappears entirely. Kafka's work offers a profound exploration of how the desire to please others can silently erode one's identity and well-being. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa epitomizes the archetype of the ultimate people-pleaser. He sacrifices his own comfort, happiness, and personal desires to ensure that his family is supported and protected. From enduring a despised job to suppressing his own needs, Gregor's life revolves entirely around meeting the expectations of others. Yet, when he can no longer fulfill these roles after his transformation, the family's care and concern evaporate. This stark contrast illustrates a painful truth. People-pleasing often yields conditional approval, leaving individuals vulnerable when they fail to meet external expectations. In modern life, this dynamic is widespread. Many tie their sense of worth to the approval of employers, colleagues, friends, or family, measuring their value by how much they give, accommodate, or sacrifice. The danger lies not merely in exhaustion or burnout, it is the subtle, gradual surrender of selfhood. By prioritizing others' comfort over personal authenticity, individuals suppress their own opinions, desires, and boundaries, creating a fragile existence where identity is entirely externally validated. Kafka warns that such behavior carries a hidden cost, eventual alienation and invisibility. People may admire or rely upon you while you conform, but this admiration is rarely unconditional. When you stop meeting expectations, the same people who depended on you may withdraw, leaving you isolated and unact. No WLLDDGED. To escape this trap, it is essential to differentiate kindness from compliance. True kindness arises from strength and choice, while people-pleasing emerges from fear, insecurity, or the desire for acceptance. Establishing clear personal boundaries, learning to say no, and practicing self-respect are crucial steps. By consciously choosing actions aligned with one's values rather than others' approval, individuals reclaim agency and authenticity. Kafka's narrative reminds us that no amount of sacrifice or compliance can replace the enduring strength and fulfillment that come from honoring one's own truth. People-pleasing may offer temporary harmony, but genuine presence and respect, both from oneself and others, are cultivated only through authenticity. One of the most enduring lessons from Kafka's work is the paramount importance of authenticity over the fleeting comfort of acceptance. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa's life is dictated by what others expect of him. From his family to his employer, every aspect of his identity is shaped by external demands. Before his transformation, Gregor never questions whether these roles align with his own desires or values. He simply conforms. The story's tragedy is not only in his physical metamorphosis, but in the symbolic revelation of how far he has allowed himself to be subsumed by expectation. This mirrors a universal human struggle, the tension between being true to oneself and seeking validation from others. In contemporary life, this pressure manifests in countless ways through social media personas, career choices made to please others, or personal compromises intended to avoid conflict or rejection. The danger is subtle but profound. When acceptance becomes the primary goal, individuality is sacrificed, and the authentic self diminishes over time. Kafka's narrative emphasizes that authenticity is a form of internal currency that cannot be traded lightly. While acceptance may offer temporary relief or social harmony, it is often conditional, fragile, and insufficient to sustain the human spirit. In contrast, living authentically, honoring one's own beliefs, passions, and values creates a stable foundation for self-respect, resilience, and genuine relationships. Practically, this requires courage and self-awareness. It means acknowledging personal desires, even when they conflict with expectation, expressing opinions honestly, and embracing one's quirks and imperfections without fear of judgment. Kafka's insight reminds us that conformity may smooth the surface of life, but it erodes depth, creativity, and inner freedom. By choosing authenticity, we reclaim the essence of who we are, allowing life to be guided by conviction rather than by the approval of others. True fulfillment comes not from being liked, admired, or accepted superficially, but from living in alignment with the core of one's being. In this way, authenticity becomes both a shield and a compass, protecting the self while guiding it through the complexities of the modern world. Kafka's work reminds us that amidst obligations and societal pressures, the human spirit can be starved of joy and disconnected from its core values. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa's existence revolves entirely around duty. His work, his family's expectations, and the relentless pursuit of external approval. Personal desires, passions, and simple pleasures have no place in his life. This lack of internal fulfillment makes his eventual alienation all the more tragic. Yet, embedded in Kafka's narrative is a subtle but powerful lesson. Even in the darkest circumstances, reconnecting with what brings genuine joy can restore a sense of self. In modern life, many of us unknowingly follow a similar path. We measure our days by productivity, milestones, and obligations, neglecting the activities, interests, and values that truly energize and define us. This creates a dissonance where life is externally busy but internally empty. Kafka's insight is clear. The reclamation of joy is not a luxury, it is a necessity for maintaining humanity and resilience. Practically, this requires deliberate reflection. One must identify the experiences and practices that resonate deeply. Beyond material gain or social expectation, this may include creative pursuits, time in nature, meaningful conversations, or simply moments of silence and introspection. Writing down personal values, what truly matters, how one wants to treat others, and what qualities define one's character, is a concrete step toward aligning actions with inner truth. By intentionally integrating these values and joyful practices into daily life, individuals counteract the dehumanizing effects of routine, work obsession, and external validation. Over time, small, consistent engagement with personal joys and values rebuilds identity from the inside out. It transforms life from mere survival or performance into an experience imbued with meaning, satisfaction, and authenticity. Kafka's work challenges us to prioritize these inner treasures, illustrating that when joy and values are nurtured, the self becomes resilient to external pressures. Reclaiming them is not indulgence, it is a radical act of preserving one's humanity in a world that often demands we sacrifice it for conformity, obligation, or approval. Kafka's work underscores the vital importance of safeguarding one's inner world. even when external circumstances feel hostile or indifferent. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa's room, initially a place of confinement, gradually becomes a sanctuary for his thoughts, emotions, and fleeting moments of introspection. Though his body is imprisoned and his family withdraws their care, the inner world of Gregor remains untouched. His capacity for reflection, imagination, and subtle observation persists. This metaphor serves as a profound lesson for modern life. In a world filled with constant demands, notifications, societal expectations, and social pressures, our inner space is at risk of erosion. Without conscious protection, the mind becomes cluttered, distracted, and reactive, leaving little room for authentic thought, creativity, or emotional resilience. Kafka reminds us that the inner sanctuary is not merely a retreat from life, it is the foundation of identity, peace, and agency.
Protecting it requires deliberate practices, creating personal rituals that foster reflection, engaging in activities that nourish the soul, and setting boundaries to filter out mental and emotional noise. Silence, journaling, mindful walks, reading, or meditation are simple yet powerful ways to reclaim this space. Moreover, protecting the inner sanctuary also means being selective about the influences one allows in, whether they are people, media, or environments. By consciously curating what reaches the mind and heart, we preserve clarity, emotional stability, and the capacity to respond to life intentionally rather than reactively. Kafka's narrative teaches that even when the external world devalues, ignores, or oppresses us, the inner life remains a sacred domain, untouchable by judgment or societal expectations. Maintaining this sanctuary is not escapism, it is an act of empowerment. By nurturing and defending the inner world, we sustain our humanity, protect our values, and cultivate the strength to navigate challenges with clarity, presence, and integrity. Kafka's stories reveal a subtle yet devastating tragedy, the invisibility of individuals in a world obsessed with utility and appearances. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa's transformation makes him literally unrecognizable, yet the true tragedy lies not in his body but in the fact that he was unseen even before the metamorphosis. His family valued him only for his productivity. Once that ceased, their care and attention vanished. This mirrors modern existence, where countless people live lives that are outwardly functional yet inwardly unnoticed. In contemporary workplaces, social circles, and even families, worth is often measured by output, performance, or conformity rather than inherent human value. Individuals can feel isolated, undervalued, and disconnected despite constant activity and effort. Kafka's insight is profound. The real catastrophe is not being ignored by the world for external reasons alone, it is losing oneself in pursuit of approval, productivity, and validation, ultimately rendering the self invisible to both others and oneself. To resist this, one must cultivate presence, awareness, and self-recognition. Engaging deeply with one's values, passions, and relationships ensures that identity and significance are grounded internally rather than externally imposed. Furthermore, by prioritizing authentic expression, emotional honesty, and meaningful connections, individuals assert their visibility in a way that transcends superficial measures of success. Kafka's work is a cautionary tale. Invisibility is not only social but existential. Remaining attuned to the self, valuing one's intrinsic worth, and nurturing authentic bonds are essential strategies to avoid the quiet erasure of identity. By doing so, we ensure that, even in a world prone to overlooking us, our existence, contributions, and humanity remain unmistakable, resilient, and fully realized.